Friends, welcome to Perfect Picture channel. I am Jagdish Yadav. There was a discussion on copyright and other rules related to photographers and their pictures in Delhi. Important discussion was organized by WNCA, means Working News Cameraman Association, and India International Center. In the previous video, we showed and narrated a part of that discussion. Today, I am bringing the second part before you. Wait few days for the third and last part of discussion. You are requested to subscribe this channel, like and share with others.
The lecture was quite illuminating and it threw beautiful light. Rather, it was quite illuminating. She explained the contours of copyright law in a beautiful manner. So I think I would try to explain the contours of law in a broader framework. First, I will start with the Constitution. So, when we start with the Constitution, then we first come at Article 19(1)(a), which gives every citizen a right to freedom of speech and expression. And your right as a photographer is basically enshrined in this particular right. As a photographer, you have a right to speech and expression, and your right to take photographs is covered into this. But this particular right is subject to certain restrictions, and you are amenable to those restrictions. And those restrictions are in Article 19(2). What are those restrictions? When you will be exercising this fundamental right, then the first thing that you will have to take care is that you will not do anything which is against the sovereignty and integrity of India. Second thing which you will have to take care is that you will not do anything which is against the security of the state. Third thing is that you will not do anything which would spoil the friendly relations of India with foreign states. And there is a fourth thing also. You will not do anything which is against public order. Then there are four other things also. You will not do anything which is against morality or decency. Similarly, you will not do anything which would invite contempt of court, or which would invite defamation, or which would invite any kind of incitement to an offense. So these are the broader contours which has been enshrined in the highest law of the land, which is Constitution, and every other law must be amenable to this Constitution. But again, there are certain safeguards also, because a government of the day cannot just apply these restrictions on you just like that in a very, very arbitrary manner. First thing is that whenever government is applying any restriction to you, then they must fall in any of these 8 classifications. Second thing is that when government is putting any restriction to you, then that restriction must be very, very reasonable. And next thing is that government cannot do with any kind of administrative order. Government will have to frame some kind of law for that. Unless a government frames a law for all these restrictions, unless these restrictions are covered by any law made by Parliament, these restrictions will not be applicable on you. They must be covered under some kind of law. So these are the broad constitutional contours within which you have to work. Then apart from this, there is another restriction also, and Madam Majumdar explained it very beautifully about the 2017 judgment. I think it was a Puttaswamy judgment. In fact, it established the right to privacy. And basically the Supreme Court said that we are already having, all the citizens are already having right to life and liberty, and basically this particular right, our Supreme Court, they linked this particular right to life and liberty. This particular right to privacy, is basically emanating from this Article 21. So, in a way, right to privacy is now also a fundamental right, as well explained by Madam Majumdar. So, we will have to take care of this particular fundamental right also. Now there is a conflict. Your right, freedom of speech and expression, is also a fundamental right, and basically it is covered, and if there are restrictions, there are only 8 restrictions, and in these 8 restrictions there is nowhere a mention of anything which will be violative of privacy. There is no mention. Then how it gets covered? Because it is covered under Article 21, and then if there will be any conflict between Article 21 and Article 19, then it is now established that Article 21 will be having an upper hand. So basically, this right to privacy has also made a kind of backdoor entry into Article 19 too. So it will have to be taken care of. It is a kind of evolving thing. One law is in the making, which will be covering right to privacy. Bill is in the making, but there are certain other laws where this right to privacy is getting covered. I will just mention those laws in passing. One law is, as Madam Majumdar will also testify, this is Section 509 of the Indian Penal Code. You cannot intrude into the privacy of any woman. In that case, her right to privacy will be violated. Similarly, in Section 354, after Section 354, many other sections were added after that Nirbhaya episode. One such section is Section 354C. It is voyeurism. It is also basically an invasion into privacy, and if anybody is indulging into voyeurism, then in that particular case, he will be all the punishments, all the penalties of that law, as provided in that particular section, will be visiting upon that particular person. Similarly, there is another section, Section 354D. It deals with stalking. It is quite likely that just in your enthusiasm, you are after some celebrity or some woman celebrity, and if she tries to be funny with you, then she can always file a case against you alleging that you are stalking. And whether it is voyeurism or whether it is stalking, punishments are extremely harsh. In the case of your voyeurism, punishment is perhaps minimum 1 year and maximum 3 years on the first occasion, and minimum 3 years, and it can go up to 7 years on the second occasion. And in the case of stalking, again the punishment is very harsh. It can go up to 3 years on the first occasion, and on the second occasion it can go up to 5 years. So you should better not indulge in any kind of stalking while trying to photograph any particular celebrity or any person whom you think that she is newsworthy. So these are the precautions which are to be taken. Then there is a reference to privacy in Juvenile Justice Act also, Section 74. So in case of minors, whether that minor is a victimizer, whether that minor is a victim, it doesn't matter. Minor is a minor. So if there is any case, any matter which deals with Juvenile Justice Act, then you will have to take care while photographing that you should not divulge the identity of that particular minor. If you will do it, then again it will be a punishable offence. Similarly, under POCSO Act, Prevention of Sexual Offences Against Children Act, again there is some such provision. So sometimes it might happen that just in your enthusiasm, you will try not to photograph that particular child, but you may photograph the school of that particular boy, the locality in which that boy is living, or the house, or any relative of that particular boy or girl. In that particular case also, by these acts of yours, which you might be doing unknowingly, but again you will be putting yourself in the risk of being prosecuted, because through these acts of yours, howsoever innocuous or innocent you might be thinking you are, but in that particular case also, since you are doing something that might lead to the disclosure of the identity of that particular boy or girl, in that particular case also, you will be putting yourself in some kind of danger. So these are certain laws which are dealing with privacy provisions in the Indian laws. Similarly, for defamation also, there is a law 499, then 500 section of IPC that deals with defamation. So there also you will have to take care that while pursuing your profession, you shouldn't do anything which will be causing any kind of defamation to any person. So, and here also there is at least one saving grace. If that person is a public personality, then in that case law is little more relaxed, because it draws its origin from an American case law that is a very famous case, New York Times versus Sullivan. So that so the ratio of that particular case has been used by our Supreme Court judges in number of cases. So that as per the ratio of that particular case, if a person is just donning the person, is rather metamorphosing into a private persona, from a private persona to a public persona, then that person must be thick-skinned enough, and that person should not be so sensitive that at every small pinprick he should approach the court and say that that I have been defamed. So, and this particular ratio has been applied in so many cases in India also. So there was one famous case, Charanjit Singh, owner of that soft drink magnate, Campa Cola, and India Today. There was a famous case, and then this ratio was applied, and then rather India Today was vindicated. Similarly, there was a case between in 2006. It was a Nakiran case, which was between the editor of a magazine Nakiran and J. Jayalalitha, and there also same ratio was applied. Similarly, there was another case in 2014. It was MP Jindal, Member of Parliament Jindal, and ZTV. So, and in that case also, this particular ratio was applied, and the verdict of the court was that if anybody is becoming a public persona, then in that public persona he should not be very thin-skinned. And it is not that public persona should be a professional public persona. a private person can also become a public person temporarily. So suppose I am basically a private person, but for a moment I am now pursuing a cause and now taking a demonstration on the street. Then in that particular case, I am exposing myself to being photographed, and since I am no longer a private person, I have donned a public persona. So in that particular case, I should not say that I cannot be photographed, and even if that photograph is being used in some manner for defaming me, in that case also, the court will take the side of the journalist and not the side of that particular person. So whenever there is a defamation case, in that case also, rather these judgments of the court can come to your help. But in cases of defamation, usually truth is the best kind of defense. If you can, suppose you have taken a photograph maliciously and you have used some kind of angle where it is not true, but you are trying to project something which is, you are trying to create some kind of impression which is not actually a fact. So, and if that person is filing any kind of defamation case against you, then in that case you can certainly be in trouble. But so long as you are acting without malice, and so long whatever picture you are taking professionally and truthfully, then it can be a best defense against any defamation law. So, and again, when it comes to Article 19.2, I had referred to security of the state. So there is already a law, and that law is our Official Secret Act 1923. And when then the thumb rule is that if there is any kind of building which says that official building which says that photography prohibited, it is better to keep off, because punishments can be quite harsh. If it is a military establishment, punishment can go up to even 14 years. If it is not a military establishment, punishment can go up to 3 years, which is also certainly not a joke. So basically, you will have to take all these cares. Similarly, there is a provision in Article 19.2, anything against decency and morality. So there is a law, Indecent Representation of Women Act 1986. You will have to take care of that particular law also. So these are the broad contours of legal restrictions which a photojournalist will have to follow.
You will cover the bomb blast. You're not going to cover the secret aspects of the military establishment.
Building can be covered.
So, if you're covering a bomb blast, you are going to have access up to a particular point in that building because you're covering that newsworthy event. The idea, so like I said at the beginning, it's logical if you think about it. It's not that illogical. Why is there something like Official Secrets Act, like Sir said? To protect the secret material inside. You're covering the bomb blast, you're not covering, are you showing documents that are there in their safe? Obviously not.
No. Definitely when I am covering that bomb blast area, I will try to give a background of that building also in that picture.
Sure.
Okay?
Certainly.
So
but you won't be entering the premises, sir.
No,
You'll still be preventing.
Yeah, I'm not entering premises.
Exactly.
Right? There are many buildings like All India Radio or RBI. It is restricted. It is said you can't take the picture of this building. But when I'm covering a bomb blast in front of that building, definitely I will keep that.
Absolutely.
Building. So what is the
That is permitted. That is permitted because it's a newsworthy event. So to give you an example of our court, so the Delhi High Court, there was a bomb blast in 2005.
Right.
Now courts are prohibited territory. You can't take photographs inside a courtroom. But of course everyone covered the bomb blast, and that obviously pertained to the outside. So even today, let's look at a distinction between a bomb blast that happens in a building where you take a photograph of the building versus taking photographs of a shootout that happens inside a courtroom. Is anyone allowed to take a photograph of that? No. So even though a shootout may be newsworthy, can you rush into the courtroom and start taking pictures during a shootout? The answer is no.
Similarly, if there is any military cantonment and if any terrorist attack, God forbid, happens, then in that case, I don't think you will be allowed to enter into that military cantonment or in any military camp and shoot.
Normal circumstances, you're not allowed to shoot it from outside. But if an event happens, then certainly from outside, insofar as that view is available from the road and you take a picture of a newsworthy event, that will be permissible insofar as you are not breaking any of the rules and entering the premises. So that's why I struck a distinction between taking a photograph of a bomb blast ridden High Court building from the outside versus entering a courtroom where a shootout is happening and shooting the people lying there with like bullets in them. You can't do the second, you can do the first.
My advice will be, suppose a bomb blast has taken place in a building which is basically covered under the Official Secret Act. If any official or any police person says that well, it is a building which is a protected place under the law, you should not take photograph, better not to take photograph.
There is a distinction between an establishment that is prohibited by general law versus, for example, a private premise. So I said at the beginning about private premises and the owner of the premise having the right to regulate. So my house may not be a space that has any official secrets in it, but I have the right to prevent someone from taking a picture of my house. Definitely. So if it's a private premise, even if it is a scientific laboratory, all you have to do is take permission. So no one is saying that it's an absolute prohibition. The moment you have a permission in place, you don't just barge into that premise. So you have to decide where my nose is. So you can say, yes, I have the right to strike a punch. But the moment that punch makes contact with my nose, your right is ended.
Your right ends.
So again, CCTV footage is slightly, so CCTV footage tends to be slightly tricky domain for the simple reason that it's a bit like phone tapping.
Security purpose.
It's a bit like phone tapping because the question is, are the people who are subject matter of that footage aware that they were being filmed? That's the question really. So if you are, for example, using CCTV, again, this becomes the domain of private rights. So, for example, even when we were talking about celebrities and we said that yes, you have a right generally to shoot, say, an Alia Bhatt when she's out in a public event, but there was this whole furor about journalists using lenses and shooting the inside of her home. In the inside of her home, she's a private individual. She's not a celebrity. So you can't shoot the inside of someone's home. So similarly, if it's CCTV images or videos that capture something that's going on in the inside of a house, in a private domain involving individuals, then without the consent of those individuals, that again becomes an obvious violation of right of privacy. You can't really use that footage without the permission of the people in question.
I would just supplement Madam Majumdar. There is a distance. You should understand. I would request you to understand the issue like this. There is a public place. There is a private place. If you are entering into a public property, it will be certainly a criminal trespass. If you are entering into somebody's house, again it will be a house trespass. But so long as you are on the footpath, you are extremely safe because you are at a public place. From there, if you want to take photograph, you can certainly take whosoever is passing through the road. Basically, normally he would not object to it because he also knows that he is in a public place where he can be photographed. But suppose you have a telecamera, even if you are at a public place, but you are pointing it to some window at the 4th floor where a couple is residing and they are not expecting to be photographed. They have not even a slightest idea that in the safety and security of their home, they can be photographed. So since they are not expecting, even from a public place, if you will be photographing them, it will be a kind of intrusion into their privacy.
But do remember something interesting here. When it comes to CCTV footage, you're not really a photographer, are you? Someone's giving you that footage. You haven't shot it. No, you haven't shot that CCTV footage.
Copyright.
The CCTV camera has been installed by whoever has it in their home. So someone who has access to that footage has given it to you, right? So if you are taking images from that CCTV footage because some newsworthy, say a crime has happened in somebody's home and someone from the police station has leaked the CCTV footage to you, the question is, you could not have gained access, you weren't in the scene of crime. So the question then, even if someone were to say that somebody's right to privacy was violated, are you going to get into trouble or the person who leaked that footage to you? The person who leaked the footage to you. Because you would not have got access to it otherwise. No, there's nothing called intellectual copyright. Intellectual property laws is the whole field of laws. So it's like saying intellectual property rights is the grain. Copyright is rice, which is a type of grain. Okay. Right? So copyright is what you're concerned with. Copyright is a type of intellectual property right.
There are many types of intellectual
property right is essentially a right over something that is a product, which is an intellectual property as opposed to a physical property. So it's an intangible property, something that is created by your intellect, by your effort, your creative effort, something that is not physical. Okay. You have to look at it through two lenses. Lens 1 is the space. Lens 2 are the people who inhabit the space. So through lens 1, like Sir also said just now, if it's a public space, then it's a, like you said, it's fair. They're fair game in the sense that there's a fair expectation that somewhere someone's clicking a photo and I may be part of that photograph because I'm in a public space. I am not asserting any private rights in that space. I'm not doing something which is, a question of privacy. So some of the things that Sir was talking about, for example, I'm not doing a private act. If I'm undertaking a private act where I have a reasonable expectation of privacy, there if you violate that. So for example, I'm doing a private act in a space believing that there is no one seeing me, and you photograph me using a telelens from a distance, right? And I don't see you. I don't have any expectation that I'm being shot at that moment. In that sort of a scenario, and I am the only subject of your photograph, I'm not incidentally, a wallflower in that photograph where there are thousands of other people in that image. So the question really is my privacy truly identifiable? Is there a violation of my privacy? Have you taken me doing something? So I'll give you a simple example. For example, Sir was talking about defamation. Someone's writing an article about, say, a public official having accepted a bribe. There's a case going on under the Prevention of Corruption Act, and the judge is deliberating on whether this public official has accepted a bribe or not. Now you decide, I'll track that public official. You see that public official go into a shop and buy a product. He's paying the shopkeeper with money. You take a photograph. At that moment, he's handing over cash to the shopkeeper. And that photograph becomes the lead photograph on the article saying, he's taken a bribe. So you're creating an impression that he's taken a bribe. So it really depends on how you're treating that subject in the photograph. Are you treating that subject in a photograph in a manner which is dubious or problematic, where they can, say that, I didn't consent to something like this. Now, he may be in a public place, buying something in a shop, doing a perfectly normal act, but you've given it a spin which is problematic. So if that is not there, it's a normal street photography, certainly it's fine. No one is going to be so unreasonable as to say that, okay, there are about 25 people that can be seen from the balloon wala to the rickshaw wala in your photograph, go get copyright releases from all of them. That's unreasonable. No one's going to say that.
But recently, ma'am, what happened, further going with Pablo's question, 1 minute, Pablo?
That's why I said at the beginning itself.
I'm just taking it further to your thing. Recently, I think Times of India, Bombay, somewhere it happened. One photojournalist took a photograph on the monsoon weather, suddenly like in Delhi today, raining and all this. And he took and one couple was going on the road. So he took the picture of the monsoon, rain and all this, and they used it, keep enjoying in the monsoon. And they protested after that. And they say, how can you say we are couple? How you used our picture? It happened recently. And Times of India published a corrigenda on that.
Sure,
finally.
Because obviously
but
taking
it's a public place. My subject was not they.
But your subject didn't consent to being called a couple.
No, but what you can call that?
But that's all right. People enjoying the rain or whatever. See, ultimately, you have to see it in that context. giving them the color of a couple was maybe what they were objecting to. So they weren't objecting necessarily to the fact that they were shot in that public place.
Basically, they were objecting to that also.
Yeah, but ultimately that you may not
finally
end up
they were
having
couples.
as much of a, so like,
Subsequently got married also.
They got married on.
but what is interesting, what is also interesting is, again, we were
Maybe
talking
because of
about,
the photograph.
who knows?
Because they got public.
So what we were talking about, the commercialization angle, like
Yeah.
for example, the National Geographic Sharbat Gula case, right? When they had taken photographs of that Afghan girl, Sharbat Gula,
Yeah.
and then they traced her for many, many years. Now, later on when she became older, in fact, these issues started coming about where they said, they wanted royalty, they wanted some royalty payments from National Geographic. Because they were commercializing her face. It wasn't any longer simply a question of public photographs of Afghan refugees. In fact, most photojournalists who cover areas of conflict are really choosing individual images that represent that conflict.
Exactly.
There are so many images of the COVID pandemic where, in fact, that day when I went up to see the exhibition, I was just chatting with Mr. Shankar and I said, yes, this particular laborer sitting and crying on the phone, holding onto the mobile phone, talking to somebody and crying, became an iconic image that was associated and reproduced several times over as an iconic image of the pandemic. So, technically speaking, if that laborer wanted royalties, maybe he could have. But the question is, are you then using that one image in a manner which is then being commercialized or in a manner which is recurrent to then focus on that person rather than that person being incidental to a general street scene or anything of that sort? So that really, whether you're commercializing it, whether you're getting any commercial advantage out of that individual is really the test.
Friends, I am requesting you to watch our new series on news analysis, Jan Man Ki Baat, on this channel only. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye.